So here's one of my favorite definitions of entrepreneurship. Jack Thorne at CMU said, entrepreneurship is insane perseverance in the face of constant rejection. That was his definition. And no definition has ever been more true, in my experience, than that definition. Insane perseverance in the face of constant rejection.
This is the L3 Leadership Podcast, episode number 154. What's up, everyone, and welcome to episode number 154 of the L3 Leadership Podcast. My name is Doug Smith, and I am the founder of L3 Leadership. We're a leadership development company devoted to helping you become the best leader that you can be. In this episode, you're going to get to hear a talk by Darrin Grove, who is the CEO of Truefit, and I've been personally following and learning from Darrin for many years now, and I'm so excited for you to get to listen to his talk. There's so many lessons that you're going to take away from this. I cannot wait for you to dig in. But before we do, just a few things. If you're new to this podcast, I just want to let you know that we're committed to bringing you 3 or 4 episodes every month to add value to your life as a leader. One will always be talk from our leadership events, one will be an interview that I do with a leader, and then once a month you'll get a personal leadership lesson by me. If you've been with us for a while, it would mean the world to me if you would hop on iTunes and subscribe and leave a rating and review, or whatever app you listen to podcasts on. It really does make a difference. I want to thank our sponsors, and I thank a unique sponsor specifically this episode, the Pittsburgh Kids Foundation, who hosted our event with Darrin. They're an organization led by my friend Brad Henderson, and they do incredible work in Pittsburgh investing in kids, youth pastors, and youth leaders all over the Pittsburgh area. They also champion many local ministries and add a ton of value to them, and they do a ton of work in Haiti as well. And Brad's also the chaplain of the Pittsburgh Penguins and the Pittsburgh Pirates, which is just incredible. It's an amazing ministry, and we're just so grateful for them, and you can check them out in the work that they do and connect with them at pittsburghkidsfoundation.org. I want to thank our other sponsor, Henny Jewelers. They're a jeweler owned by my friend and mentor, John Henny. My wife, Laura, and I got our engagement and wedding rings through Henny Jewelers, and they're just an incredible company. Not only do they have great jewelry, but they also invest in people. John actually gave Laura and I a book to help us prepare for our marriage and has been investing in me as a leader and a father and a husband now for many years. So if you're in need of a good jeweler, check out hennyjewelers.com. With that being said, let's jump right into the talk with Darrin. Just a little bit about Darrin that you should know before we jump into his talk. But he is, as I mentioned, Truefit's founder and CEO and a native Pittsburgher. And he's a phenomenal leader. And what I love about this talk is Darrin shares his story. And time again, you'll hear how he had to grow personally for his organization to grow. And I don't want to give away too much, but that's what I admire most about Darrin, is that he's always willing to reinvent himself and grow to go to the next level. Darrin's also an active member of the Blue Tree Allied Angels. He serves as an advisor to Alpha Lab, a Pittsburgh startup accelerator, which helps promote growth of innovative startups, and also serves on several nonprofit boards throughout the Pittsburgh area. He's an incredible leader. As I mentioned, he's making a huge impact here in Pittsburgh, not just with his company, but with him as an investor and as a mentor to many, many entrepreneurs. And so in this talk, you'll hear him share his story of entrepreneurship, and I think you'll get so much out of it. So with that being said, let's jump right into the talk with Darrin. Enjoy, and I'll be back at the end with a few announcements.
Good evening. Great to be with you guys. Doing well. Ready for the game. Beautiful day. Doug picked the perfect day. I'll start by commending you. You're here tonight because you take your role as a leader seriously. And I myself, I fancy myself as a lifelong learner when it comes to leadership. And so kudos to you for being here tonight. It's my pleasure to talk to you tonight. As Doug and I were talking about, what should we talk about tonight? We were talking about entrepreneurship, and we were recognizing that there's so much buzz. Pittsburgh's a great town for startups. It's a great town for entrepreneurs, and there's so much buzz in the entrepreneurial community. So there's lots of places you can go to hear a talk on how to do a startup or how to be an entrepreneur. And so we thought we'd do something a little bit different and talk about what does entrepreneurship look like over the long haul. So Truefit just celebrated this past February our 20th anniversary. And so we've been at this a little while. And I would say that, kind of the journey of an entrepreneur never ends. A lot of people, a lot of guys I talk to a lot of young people who are coming through a tech accelerator like Alpha Lab. And they're excited, and they're doing their first startup. And I think they have a picture in their mind that at some point this whole entrepreneurship thing is going to get easier. And I have to kind of break it to them that after 20 years, the journey of an entrepreneur, in my experience, hasn't really ever gotten easier. And I think one of the reasons for that is that we keep starting up over and over again. And so what we're going to talk about tonight, and the story I'd like to tell you, is kind of how we, over the course of 20 years, have continually innovated and reinvented the company. And as a company, we have gone through, over 20 years, what I identify as 4 seasons of life. We're going to kind of talk through those. Each one of them kind of has their own character. Each one of them has their own lessons learned. As Doug mentioned, I'd prefer that this be a little more interactive. So I want to encourage you to, as we kind of work through this story, there may be a moment that you say, I have a question about that. Now, I'll come back to questions at the end so you can save them, but I'd prefer that we make this more of a dialogue. And I've given Doug permission so that you know that he can kind of jump in and quiz me spontaneously, and you have the same permission. So if something sparks your interest and you'd like to go a little bit deeper, I'm happy to do that. This is going to be a flyby. You're going to get 20 years in 20 minutes. It's kind of how this talk goes. So let's get started. I'm going to rewind a little bit more, and I'm going to tell you about season 0. Season 0 is kind of before Truefit started, because a lot of people ask me, like, how did you become an entrepreneur? Like, how did you know? What was the moment that you knew you wanted to be an entrepreneur? And I'll tell you that there, unfortunately, isn't any magic to it. I didn't dream of being an entrepreneur for years. I didn't study entrepreneurship in school. They didn't have entrepreneurship back then, entrepreneurship programs like they do today. I was working at a local company. My roots are, I'm a local Pittsburgh guy. Like, I grew up around here. Pittsburgh is home to me, always has been. And my roots are, my family roots are in manufacturing. So my family has kind of followed the trajectory of Pittsburgh. My grandfather worked in the steel mills, and my dad was a manufacturing guy. I became fascinated with software when I was in junior high, and that was when coding first became a thing. My first program I ever wrote was on a teletype, like paper, not even a screen, like just the paper, right? I've done punch cards, I've done all of that. So I traced my roots in software to kind of the earliest days of software. But because of my roots, I grew up in manufacturing. And because of that, I worked for an awesome company and really cut my teeth as a leader at a company called Penn United Technologies, which is a manufacturing company up in Saxonburg. It's an awesome company. And that's where I learned the very earliest lessons of leadership. So my role there was, I was essentially their IT director, and one of the responsibilities I had was to implement a whole new set of manufacturing software for them. And that kept me quite busy for many, many years. I worked with a startup company that at the time was the kind of leading provider of cutting-edge manufacturing software called Lilly Software. They had just come out with a new product on the market. I bought this progressive product, and I was in the process of implementing it. And I built, over the course of several years, built a really close relationship with Lilly Software. And eventually I had bought the source code. I was customizing it to Penn United's needs. And at some point, I was producing so much software that we decided that, hey, it doesn't really fit inside of a manufacturing company anymore. Maybe we should start something new. And so entrepreneurship for me was born out of an opportunity to create software for Lilly Software as a company, a vision that we had that we could create software products and serve a broader population of people than just the work I was doing at Penn United, and action, which is I was willing to take a risk. At that point in my life, I was 29. I had 2 kids, one that was 2 years old and one that was newborn. I was in the process of buying a house, and I'm about to start a tech company, so picture this, right? So I hurry up and buy a house and sign the mortgage before I start Truefit, because I knew that no bank would talk to me after I started Truefit. I leave a secure job, I take action, and I decide to launch Truefit. For me, so that was entrepreneurship for me. I didn't study it. I didn't go through a tech accelerator. And so I learned a couple interesting lessons during that time. First of all, Penn United, one of the things I respected most about Penn United is that it was a values-centric company, run by a very strong set of values, actually influenced by faith. And they were kind of hard at the project of really understanding how to apply values in every area of the organization. And about the time, you might remember a book that Jim Collins wrote called Built to Last. And Jim studied this in Built to Last, and he said, one of the key things that strengthens the culture of an organization is its value system. And so we went through a process there at Penn United of like writing down the values and baking them into the culture. And so when we started Truefit, I recognized that all this good work that we've done and all these values that I've learned from guys who are a lot older and wiser than me were universal. They were universal values. And so when we started Truefit, on day one, we had a system of values that influenced our culture as a company. And so when I would talk to guys to say, you want to kind of join the adventure with me, I would say, this is the type of company that we're going to become. And so Truefit's been values-based since day one as well. And I will tell you, more than anything else, those values have defined the personality of who we've become. As we work through the seasons of life, you'll see that we've taken different forms. Our mission has changed over time, but our values have stayed very consistent over that same time. And more than anything else, have shaped who we are as a company. And I learned those at Penn United. That was where I cut my teeth. And the values, if you pull up my website and you pull up Penn United's website, you go, yeah, he copied all of that. It's true.
Can you share a few, just as examples, so we can kind of put context to it as we go through the story?
Yeah, for sure. So we have 4 core values as a company. We're principled. That means that we fundamentally ask the question, what is the right thing to do? Not what's in our financial interest, not what's practical, but what is the right thing to do? And that's what it means to us to be principled. So we're always asking that question, what's the right thing to do? We're principled, we're collaborative. We believe in building relationships of high trust, working as a team. We believe in a diverse group of people pulling together for a common purpose. And so that's what we mean to be collaborative, principled, collaborative, empowering. We're a pretty flat organizational structure. And we are practitioners of servant leadership, which is probably a whole other talk in itself. But in general, the leaders, we see everybody in the company as a leader. And leaders' jobs are to serve each other and to ultimately serve our customers. So principled, collaborative, empowering, and we serve the common good. We want to create software that makes the world a better place, fundamentally. And so when we get an opportunity, we have to ask the question, do we think that this software will make the world a better place? And some projects we say yes to, and some projects we say no to. One of the reasons that we do a lot of work in the healthcare space these days is because there's so much cool innovation going on that is really improving people's lives, helping them recover from disease faster, making the world a better place. And so we find a lot of that in healthcare. Health, wellness, fitness, and sports are kind of a lot of the industries that we focus on. So principled, collaborative, empowering, and serving the common good are the values that we live by. Yeah. So that's season 0. That's how Truefit got started. I didn't even really get the business plan right, to be honest with you. I went to Lilly Software and I said, I had built a bunch of custom software for them. And I said, let me be your custom team. And he said, no, that's not what I want you to do, actually. I want you to create new products for me. This is Dick Lilly, the founder of Lilly Software. And so I said, well, tell me about that. And so the very first product that we created, these guys were in the manufacturing space. They wanted to move into the distribution space. And I'm comfortable with manufacturing, know that, back of my hand, cold. He says, I want you to create a new warehouse management product. So this is the type of software that runs a large distribution center. It sounds simple. It's shelves and doors, right? But no, there's a lot that goes on inside a large distribution center. And we wrote the software that optimized all of that. At one point, kind of earlier in their life, Under Armour in their Baltimore DC was running our software. And so every piece of Under Armour that you would have bought 10 years ago was distributed with our software. Kind of a cool story. So, and we were competing with best of breed warehouse management solutions, but I started out knowing nothing about warehouse management. We worked with a great product owner, product manager to build that. And that was really what defined the first season of life at Truefit. We were creating a great product that we wanted to be successful in the market, working directly with clients, and growing a small team of people based on a set of values. And that was really the kind of key learning. We were in the trenches learning how to create a product development team in season 1, working in partnership with Lilly Software. So, anybody see a problem with that? I know you see the problem. We'll come back to Larry. He's not allowed to answer the questions yet. Correct. Yes. So all of our eggs were really in one basket. And so as we worked our way through season 1, we realized, look, if Lilly ever pulls the plug on this, we're in big trouble. And so that created a tremendous amount of risk for the business. And so we knew that. We had tried to branch out. It was a little tricky early on. And so heading into season 2, so that was the first 5 years of life, heading into season 2, the real strategy was, how do we diversify, right? Like, how do we get involved in some other projects? And that was harder than it looked because we were committed to not competing with Lilly, right? We knew manufacturing and distribution. If I go work for anybody else doing manufacturing and distribution, I'm going to be competitive. So the answer was not obvious for that reason of kind of like, how do you diversify? What's a diversification strategy actually look like? And so we experimented with all kinds of stuff. I see season 2 as our teenage years. If season 1 was kind of early childhood, we were growing. Season 2 was our teenage years. We were awkward. We didn't really know what we wanted to be when we grew up. We ran tons of experiments. We wasted tons of money trying things that didn't work. Everything we did in season 2 outside, we were still working for Lilly, and that was going fine, which is probably the only reason we're here. But we tried a bunch of different stuff, and literally none of it worked. We tried, most of what we tried was implementing other people's software. So we tried implementing Microsoft CRM for a while. In fact, we were the largest reseller of Microsoft CRM in season 2, which amounted to almost nothing because nobody was buying CRM back in those days when Microsoft first launched it. So we had a very big percentage of a very, very small market. We tried project management software. Nothing worked. Literally nothing worked for 5 years. So that was season 2. At the end of season 2, we made some really important decisions. What I realized was that if we're going to be successful, and keep in mind that I just spent 10 years building a relationship with Lilly Software, if we're going to be successful, I'm going to have to, number one, stop coding. This was hard for me. Because I'm a software architect. I had written a lot of code. I had architected the warehouse management product. And I said, I've got to stop coding. and I have to turn over Lily to somebody else, and I have to start with nothing. I have to start from ground zero and rebuild into a new market, and I didn't even know what it was at the time. I didn't know where I was going to go or what we're going to focus on. This is the part of the story that I need to introduce Larry Black, who's here tonight, because around the end of season 2, Larry was working on his MSOL, Masters in Organizational Leadership, and he came to me. Larry's known me since I was a wee lad, and he came to me and he said, could I study your culture? Keep in mind the interesting set of values that he knew I learned at Penn United anyway. Can I study your culture? Because for my MSOL paper, I was like, sure. And so he came in and interviewed like all these folks, and of course wrote a very humbling and complimentary paper on Truefit. And so I'm flipping through it. I'm feeling pretty good about what Larry's writing. I get to the end, and like somewhere around the last page, it says, Truefit has all these great things going on, but what I really can't understand is they hate salespeople. And I thought, well, that's not true. And so I invited Larry to lunch, and I said, Larry, we don't hate salespeople. He goes, yeah, you do. You guys just don't like salespeople. Keep in mind, I have one customer. Remember this? So he says, yeah, you guys really don't like salespeople. It's not just you, Darrin. It's like everybody in the organization. They don't like salespeople. And so, being who I am, I guess, I'm not willing to take something like that laying down. I'm not willing to not rise to the challenge. So what I realized eventually is that Larry's right. Like Larry really was right. He had diagnosed this correctly. And what Larry knew ahead of me is that if we didn't figure out the importance and the value of selling, we would not kind of break out of the gravity of the Lilly software relationship. And so he nailed that down. And it was probably part inspiration and part personal challenge. Larry's good at like hitting you and making you get back up, right? So, and partially years of mentoring that he did with me, I made the decision at the end of season 2, beginning of season 3, turn over Lilly software to somebody else. I'm going to start with nothing. I'm going to start showing up at networking events. I'm going to start introducing Truefit to other people. And I had no idea what I was doing. Like literally, I'm a software architect who is trying to become a salesperson. And it was rough sledding, I got to tell you. Like reinventing yourself. I don't know if any of you have gone through this process, but reinventing your career is no easy task, and not for the faint of heart. But that's what I set out to do. And yeah.
I had a question. A lot of small businesses are stuck in season 2, trying to get out into season 3. What can you say to the entrepreneurs who do not have Larry? How can they see what you saw to make that transition?
Yeah, it's a great question. So let me fill in a few blanks about the transition in answer to your question. So in addition to Larry helping me out, I recognized that this whole we don't know what we want to be when we grow up, and we had tried to keep in mind we had tried a bunch of things and none of it worked, experiments. And so I ran into I met a guy named Brian Cabarney. Anybody know Brian Cabarney? Brian runs an organization called Clear Brands. Brian is a branding genius, and his genius is what I call organizational DNA testing. So he comes in and he really understands who you are as a business. So this is an identity. We're trying to answer an identity question, right? Just like my 20-year-old son is trying to answer an identity question. So what do we want to be when we grow up? And so Brian comes in and he works with us. We go through a workshop together. And he says, what you guys love, what you're passionate about, just listening to you. And we talked about, like, we answered questions like, who is he calls it your soulmate client. Like, who's the client that you've worked for over these years that is really just felt like you were on your A game, felt like you were bringing your best. And so we went through this analysis, and he comes back, and Brian identifies what he calls the single nail, like the one thing you do better than everybody else. What's your distinctive? What's your key core value proposition, if you will? And he said, you guys are innovators. You guys love innovation. You help people create innovative new software products. That's what you love. And it turned out that he was right. And so, aha. Now, the very interesting thing, since you're following the story, is that, and why I say Brian's a genius at organizational DNA testing is because Brian didn't give us something new to do. He reminded us of what we started doing way back at the beginning, what we loved way back at the beginning. All the experiments failed, but what we had gotten away from was creating amazing new software products for people, like we did with the warehouse management product. And Brian just put his finger on it. And once we realized that, it was like an aha moment at the end of season 2, beginning of season 3. And so that was key. Another key is, Larry was gracious and had lunch with me every once in a while, but I needed more full-time attention than that. I was a much harder student than that. So I hired a guy who I consider the best sales coach in Pittsburgh, a guy named John Rosso with Peak Performance. I had met John. I think, Dan, you actually introduced me to John because he was on the board of the CCO at the time. And so I hired John Rosso as a sales coach, and John Rosso has been my sales coach, and I meet with him every month for 10 years. So far be it, you don't stop going to school on this stuff. This is part of the you never get to arrive part of entrepreneurship. So I also made those 2 decisions and investments, frankly, in rebooting my career, switching my career. And I would say that it's probably another dimension to the story that I can tell at a different time. But it's guys like Larry and John and Brian who came alongside me, and a lot of other guys, by the way. I need a lot of help. Let's just be honest about that. I needed a lot of help. And so I'm a very big proponent of mentoring. I've always had kind of go-to mentors in my life. In other startups, that can take the form of an advisory team. That could take the form of kind of a board of directors. It could take the form of mentors. One of the great things, by the way, that Alpha Lab does extremely, extremely well as a tech accelerator here locally is it connects you with that mentorship. It's guys that are further down the road who can challenge you. And that's what I needed to break out of season 2. It's really what I needed. And I think a lot of grace and a lot of providence to kind of make all of that happen. I don't take the credit for that. It was a whole group of people. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think we should also emphasize the fact that you were willing to accept. So a lot of people have advisors around. A lot of people, when you need help, you said, I need help. But a lot of people, when they need help, don't really realize all the advisors around them. And with all the advice that they get, that they're willing to accept that advice. So I think there's a little credit that you can give yourself for that. You were willing to accept.
So put it in, thank you. I think if you put it in a little bit of context, you'll see that we had failed over and over and over again, right? So I think a little self-awareness combined with a little humility, combined with 5 years of failure, eventually I got to the point where I knew I needed some help. But so that was kind of the end of that season. Go ahead.
Yeah, were there ever moments where you wanted to throw in the towel or just say, we're done? And how many times, how do you push through those seasons? And what's your advice to entrepreneurs when they should push through those seasons and to just come to say, hey, this isn't for me, or hey, I need to try something else?
Yeah. So that's a hard question. I would say, so here's one of my favorite definitions of entrepreneurship. Jack Thorne at CMU said, entrepreneurship is insane perseverance in the face of constant rejection. That was his definition. And no definition has ever been more true, in my experience, than that definition. Insane perseverance in the face of constant rejection. True. It's true.
What's up?
So yeah, just make sure you credit Jack, because that's his quote. I stole that. But no definition is truer in my experience. And so did I ever want to throw in the towel? There's times that I thought we might have to throw in the towel. I always have this, like, I do have the insane perseverance part. Maybe I just have the insane part. But we have had to push through lots and lots of challenges. And as I mentioned at the beginning, those challenges have not stopped. Those challenges continue right up to today. We're in an interesting period of challenge right now. So it's these seasons of life. I will say that I really agree with Eric Ries. Anybody read The Lean Startup? Highly recommend The Lean Startup. Thank you, Laura, for always answering my questions. I really appreciate that. Nobody else is raising their hand. Either that or they're not reading the same books that you are. So Eric Ries in The Lean Startup says, he defined what he calls the build, measure, learn cycle, right? You build something small, you measure feedback from the market, from users, you learn from that, and you figure out what to build next. And if you haven't read the book, you definitely should read the book, particularly if you're an entrepreneur in a startup. But this is a practice that we've baked into everything that we do at Truefit. But at the end of that build, measure, learn cycle, you make a decision. And the decision is to pivot or persevere. Now, pivot doesn't mean shut down. Pivot means change direction, right? But in a lean or agile kind of product development life cycle, which is what we practice at Truefit, you get points of decision to pivot or persevere. You can either keep going in the same direction or you can shift to a new trajectory. And I'm a big proponent of those small cycles. So do things small. Think small. Don't think big 5-year plan and stay on it. Think in small iterations. And then pivot or decide if you're going to pivot or persevere. Right. So we're at the end of season 2, I think, and I just made this discovery. Now, we discover that we're all about innovation, and the fortuitous or providential part of this is we discover this right before the industry trend around mobile technology. And we had actually done some early work in mobile technology for Lilly, and we recognized what was going to happen next. And we were very early to the game in mobile. And so that was a very nice pairing with this idea that we're going to help people create innovative new products, because everybody at that point wanted an app, right? Like there was app mania, and everybody wanted. Nobody knew what it took to build. Like everybody, including us, huge learning curve, and we. So we set off, and we're doing a lot of mobile apps, a lot of web type stuff. And what we started to run into, and what we learned, one of the things we learned in season 3 was that we really had to take user experience seriously. And we're, again, whole group of engineers, largely engineering company, who's starting to bump into the value of design and human-centered design, to be more particular. And so, again, experiments. We hired somebody who turned out to be mostly a graphic designer. We hired somebody else who turned out to be mostly kind of more of a creative director. But Apple was setting such a high bar for user experience back in those days that we knew we had to take this seriously. And so, again, multiple experiments, multiple failed attempts. We eventually started to do work with a local company called Just Design. Just Design was the founder and principal of Just Design was a guy named John Beck. You might have met John Beck, and if you haven't met John Beck, you should meet John. Lovely guy, the most talented designer I've ever met. And so we started to do projects with them where they would kind of do the research and design, and we would do the engineering, and we would partner. And one day John invited me to breakfast, and he said, hey, Darrin, we've been thinking. And when he said we, he means his partners. So it's a small downtown firm. He said, we've been thinking that we want to join forces with a larger company. Would you be interested in talking about that? So I, again, had years of respect for John and his work. We had been doing projects together. I knew that John and I were values aligned. And so we entered into a conversation that took about 6 months where we explored what an acquisition of Gist would look like if Truefit acquired Gist. And this was in 2013. So now I'm kind of getting up closer to the current day. So in 2013, we finalized our deal with John. We acquired Gist Design. We had never done I don't have any experience with acquisitions. This is all new. It's all learning for me. Great learning experience. But what that did for us was it gave us this amazing capability in research and design and kind of catapult. We were trying to grow this organically in the organization. But it was through this very complementary acquisition that we kind of probably jumped 10 years into our future and got not only a great research and design team, but also a portfolio of clients that were national. So now that kind of rounded out what we do, both in terms of our skill set and in terms of our market. And that was really how season 3 ended. I marked the end of season 3 with the acquisition. Now, I had these wonderful goals. You guys all set goals? I had this wonderful goal. We were going to do this integration in 90 days. That was my goal. And I had read a lot, said that was possible. I had a meeting with my board, all of whom have experience with acquisitions, and they said, Darrin, look, you got to realize something. First of all, most acquisitions fail completely. Like they don't end up working. The ones that work take 3 to 5 years in order to kind of really get it humming. And so that stuck in my head. It turns out that they were very, very right. So guess what season 4 has looked like for us, right? Integration. So we're right now 4 years into season 4, and we have been pushing. We've been having a lot of fun. First of all, a lot of fun, and it's been challenging. It's not been without its challenges. I don't know if any of you have friends who are designers and friends who are engineers, but if you put them together, very interesting things will happen. And if you put them together to tell them to work on a project together, very interesting things will happen. And what I learned, my first team leader, a guy who's really well known in the city, I went to him for advice. Rick Kotarmansky is the CTO at Summa. And I said, hey, Rick, we're about to do this. What can you tell me about designers and engineers working together? He goes, well, Darrin, they're competitors, so he wasn't going to tell me very much. He says, well, Darrin, I'll just say there are very, very different types of people. So our goal, and our goal still, is to create cross-functional teams. What we've learned is that when you put research, design, engineering, QA, product owner together in a team, in a cross-functional team, you get tons of efficiency. Most organizations, even if they have design and engineering, have more of a kind of waterfall approach to that. The designers do their thing, and they throw it over the wall to the engineers, and then they build a thing, and then they throw it over the wall to testing, and they test the thing. We're trying to do something that's very, very different. We're trying to weave together research, design, engineering, QA, product ownership in a really tight cross-functional team of about 8 people. And so we're not done yet. We're kind of in process with that one. We've made tons of headway. We just made some shifts at the end of this past year, to kind of reorg around this a little bit more. In that process, we've changed our business model, how we work with clients. We've changed our core markets. We changed our location. We were originally located in Cranberry for 15 years. We just 2 years ago moved downtown to the Union Trust Building. If you have not been to the Union Trust Building to see the renovation that they're doing to this beautiful historic building in Pittsburgh that dates back to Henry Frick, you must come over and see it. And if you can't walk through the building, at least go to one of the new restaurants that they put in the building, because it's phenomenal. So we were early adopter of that. We moved the whole company from Cranberry to downtown, which was a big cultural shift for us. Definitely a move in the right direction. I love working downtown. It's a really cool time to be downtown. So all of that has been, we've changed everything about the business in the last in the last season of life. So I guess let me get to your question, but I guess my key takeaways. Here's the key takeaway that I want you to get. Like the journey of entrepreneurship can start in lots of different ways. I combined opportunity with vision with action, right? That's what I did there. And it never ends. So I would say my lesson over the last 20 years is you've got to keep reinventing yourself. At each season of life, we reinvented the company. And in many times, like in between, we made significant tweaks to either how we're organized, how we sit together, where we work, all of that. The continuous innovation process, the continuation of the entrepreneurial journey. I would just say you got to keep going. You got to keep evolving. So, did you have a question? That gives you the history. There's a season 5 coming, so maybe I can come back and talk about season 5 sometime. But season 5 hasn't been written yet, so I'm excited to see what happens in season 5. But I can definitely picture that we'll be reinventing ourselves again, and we're already starting to talk about what that might look like.
I love what you were saying about the cross-functional teams and bringing everybody from what would typically be very divided departments together. Mm-hmm. So logistically, internally, do you handle that? Do you assign teams by client or project, or do you have everybody's working on different things and then you just come together at different times? How streamlined is that, or is it more like a web?
Yeah, it's a great question. So let me tell you where we came from and then where we went. So we used to organize teams around projects. It's kind of the way movies are made. A project pops up, and then you assemble the group of people that's going to work on it, and then when the project's over, the team disbands. And what we have learned is that there's tons of flexibility. The advantage of that model is flexible. The disadvantage of that model is that those teams, you never really have time to form as a team, right? Because you keep assembling and breaking them up and assembling and breaking them up. So what we did at the end of this year was we decided that we're going to organize around permanent teams, and then we're going to drop projects onto. So the team has all the capabilities, all the cross-functional capabilities it needs. They all sit together. So they're in the same vicinity. They can look over their shoulder and talk to each other. And so that proximity has been very, very important. What we have, and so those teams are given an opportunity to form and really perform. So instead of being like movies are made, it's more like sports teams, right? It's more like you get to train together, you get to run plays together, you get to learn how each other works. And it's been working very, very well. We've sacrificed a little flexibility in the process. The other thing we've had to learn how to do is to keep the disciplines meeting together, right? So if I'm a designer, right now designers are spread across teams, right? So how do you get the designers together on occasion to really understand what the next level of design looks like? And we have to be intentional about that piece of it. But day to day, you're working with clients and you're focused on a portfolio. Each team now has a portfolio of projects. Yeah.
That's great. For time's sake, we don't have time for any more questions, but I always like to give you an opportunity to sell Truefit. But how can people connect with you, get connected with what Truefit offers? Maybe if their organization would be interested, and how can we serve you and pray for you as a leader?
Yeah, so I'd invite you to check out our website, truefit.io, truefit.io. I'm happy to answer any questions about what we do. If you have an idea for a new software product, that's where you want to, we're the person you want to talk to. We also do a lot of work with people who have an existing product, but they need to take it to the next level, adopt a new technology, grow it into a new market, things like that. So if you want to create a new product or take a current product to the next level, that's the type of projects that we work on, all software related for now. And you can also connect with me on LinkedIn or on Facebook. You'll find me in those places, and happy to continue the conversation.
Great. Can we give Darrin a hand? Yeah. Hey everyone, thank you so much for listening to Darrin Grove's talk. I hope that it added value to your life. You can find ways to connect with Darrin in the show notes at l3leadership.org/episode 154. I've also interviewed Darrin in the past for the podcast. If you'd like to go and listen to that, it's actually in episode number 14. He was one of the original interviews, and I hope that'll add value to your life as well. A few announcements as we wrap up. I want to let you know that we recently introduced L3 Leadership membership. For just $25 a month, you can now become a member of L3 Leadership, which will get you into our events here in Pittsburgh for free. You'll get an L3 Leadership t-shirt. You'll get access to joining a mastermind group, access to our member-only site filled with extra content, resources, and courses to help you go to the next level, and so much more. For more information on membership, go to l3leadership.org/membership. I want to thank our other sponsor, Alex Touland and Real Estate Resources. Alex is a full-time realtor with Keller Williams Realty, whose team is committed to providing clients with highly effective premier real estate experiences throughout the greater Pittsburgh region. He's a member and a supporter of L3 Leadership, and he would love the opportunity to connect with you. If you have any real estate needs, find out more at PittsburghPropertyShowcase.com. Lastly, if you want to stay in touch with us and everything that we're doing here at L3 Leadership, you can sign up for our email list on our website at l3leadership.org, and you'll get a free copy of my ebook, Making the Most of Mentoring, which is my step-by-step process for how I get meetings with leaders. As always, I like to end with a quote, so I'm quoting Gerald Brooks. I thought this was fitting for Darrin's talk, but Gerald Brooks said this. He said, "Don't let your defeats defeat you." I love that. Don't let your defeats defeat you. Thanks again for listening and being a part of L3 Leadership. If this podcast added value to your life, we would love it if you would subscribe and leave a rating and review. Laura and I appreciate you so much, and we will talk to you next episode.